All right, I have another video for you, and this video has to do with, once again, Mike Todd, Transformation Church. But Mike Todd is not preaching in this one. This is, I believe, his associate pastor, Tim Ross. Tim Ross hosts a podcast called Tim Ross in the Basement or Tim Ross Underground or whatever it is. But nonetheless, he hosts a podcast that he interviews different pastors or different individuals. But in this particular clip of a past sermon, recent sermon that he preached, he used certain vernacular, certain phraseologies to try to explain Christ, what he did as it concerns the atonement. But his vernacular is totally out of pocket, totally out of line, and not useful for proper glorification of what Christ did on the cross. So we're going to jump into this video, but before we do, I do want to make sure that you know to subscribe to The Gospel Truth. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so that you don't miss out on any interviews, debates, or commentaries such as this one. All right, without further ado, let's get into this video.
We don't make it rain on booty cheeks.
Okay, so he starts off by saying we don't make it rain, should I say. We don't make it rain on booty cheeks. All right, so this is a problem right off the jump, right? Obviously, this is not the whole sermon, but I don't think the whole sermon needs to be heard when you begin to use vernacular such as this. This is not glorifying to Christ. This is not glorifying to God in any manner. This is not edifying to the church. This is not edifying in any manner. Right. So when you start off using terms of vernaculars to try to try to explain something that is supposed to be glorifying to God, you're already starting off on the wrong foot. So we don't make it rain on booty cheeks is unnecessary, especially unnecessarily as it concerns the church. There are plenty of ways to explain what you're saying without using such vernacular.
We don't make it rain on strippers. We only reverence one stripper.
And see, he's referencing Christ as a stripper. Now, what he goes on to say, I'm not going to spoil it. Go ahead and listen.
And that's the one that took off glory to put on humanity and then get butt naked on a cross to die for both you and me.
You see the phraseologies, like we could sit here and say, well, what he's trying to say is this, and what he's trying to say is that. But you don't use those type of terminologies and phraseologies as it concerns the glorification of Christ in the idea of the atonement. This is terminologies and phraseologies that are used to try to adapt and communicate with a certain culture. And so I get trying to communicate with a certain culture, so you use certain terms to try to communicate, but this is not glorifying to God. This is not glorifying to Christ. It should not be used, right? Christ did not he didn't use, the way that they're using it is implying that Christ stripped himself as if he's a stripper, like a stripper inside of a strip club. And that is not the way that we should be, that's not the way we should be phrasing something that is such a sacred talking points as it concerns Christ's atonement. We should not be using it that way, right? Christ limited himself. He poured out himself. It's called kenosis. He emptied himself of his glory, in the sense that he didn't remove it as if he didn't have glory, but the idea of kenosis is that he poured himself out. He self-emptied. He put his glory to the side, or he limited his glory. He limited his power for the sake of coming down in the form of a servant and dying on a cross for the sins of the world. So this idea of trying to use words that sort of fit the culture, we want to make sure the culture understands. Well, that's not edifying to the church to try to get the culture to understand in that way. right? We can draw back our theological points. We can draw back our theological vocabulary and be able to zero in on what we're trying to explain in a more simplistic manner. But that doesn't mean we have to use terms such as stripping. I glorify somebody who stripped on the cross and died on the cross. He stripped himself. No, that is not the proper way to communicate such a thing as the atonement. And what it does, it paints God in a manner that you're applying this strip club type of scene to the cross. And that's not cool, because that's not the image we want to give Christ. That's why you don't want to apply such things in that manner.
The only stripper I'm in love with is Jesus.
Now, Jesus was not a stripper, right? This is not what it's about. This is not the understanding, right? This is not the understanding that should be communicated here. Jesus is not a stripper. And once again, this term stripper is being associated with the idea of someone in a strip club, a female in a strip club, right? And so we should not correlate the two together, right? Because it brings blasphemous, profane against that person of Christ, of what he did in the atonement. So we should not be doing such things because it's blasphemous. It brings a category of disrespect to Christ, and we don't want to do that. And that's why this type of language, this type of talking points are not useful when it comes to understanding the atonement, right? Understanding what Christ did. It's not helpful. It's not useful, because now instead of focusing on the atonement and what actually happened and what it means for Christ to empty himself, kenosis, now you're focusing in, you're zeroing in on a cultural aspect of stripping and attempting to try to apply it to something that's just not that. They do not correlate together. Okay?
And he's the one that puts that bread in my pocket. That bread in my pocket. I got 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 bread in my pocket.
All right, so that's the end of that video. And as you can see, they ended it by chanting over and over and over again, I have bread in my pocket. I have bread in my pocket. Now, this is the absurdity that we always see at Transformation Church. There is no one there that could just teach proper biblical exegesis, right? There's no one there that could properly exegete the text and just teach from the text. Everything has to be this big charade, party, phenomenon. It has to be. A pastor can't, at Transformation Church, a pastor cannot just do the job of a pastor. They got to be just off the rails, flamboyant, charismatic. Right? That's how Transformation Church gets down. And it's sad. It is incredibly sad that there are so many people who go to Transformation Church and they hear this nonsense. They hear this garbage, because that's what it is. It's completely garbage, right? To reference Jesus in the same liking as a stripper, and to end it by saying God puts bread in my pocket. I'm assuming they're talking about money. And if they are talking about money, I would not be surprised, because if you're not aware, money, bread is in the slang term or urban term, bread is synonymous with money. It's explained as money. I got bread in my pocket. I got money in my pocket. Right? So I wouldn't be surprised if Transformation Church, Tim Ross is implying that when he says, I got bread in my pocket. But this goes exactly in cue with what Transformation Church is all about, right? This flows right in line with Transformation Church. And I'm not surprised at all, nor should you be surprised at all if you understand what Tim Ross and Mike Todd is all about, and the whole community at Transformation Church. I pray that God does a work in these people's heart, man, because this is a lost church, right? If these individuals are appealed to this nonsense and this seeker-friendly nonsense, it's a sad thing. And once again, this shows the blasphemous nature that is Transformation Church, talking about Jesus is a stripper, and that Jesus puts bread in my pocket. And this is supposed to be about the atoning work of Christ. This is sad, completely sad. Well, that's all I have for you. Make sure that you are subscribing to The Gospel Truth. Make sure you hit that notification bell as well, so you can stay in the loop with The Gospel Truth has going on. You don't want to miss out on any interviews, debates, or commentaries. All right. Take care and God bless.